Your name is presented on a document with the first letter of your first and last name capitalized. It represents capitis diminutia minima, which occurs when a man's family relations alone were changed. It's a minimal loss of rights. When your last name appears in capital letters, it represents capitis diminutia media, which occurs when a man loses his rights of citizenship but not his rights to liberty. This means you can be fined and penalized but not enslaved or imprisoned. But when your entire name is capitalized on any document, it represents capitis diminutia maxima, which states that a man's condition changes from freedom to bondage. All rights of citizenship and family rights are surrendered. This means you can be fined, imprisoned, and enslaved in any amount for any duration at the whim of the state's suggestion. But it is important to note that if you do not legally bind yourself to these documents stating that you waive your rights and represent a corporation, you do not have to attend any court.
There are two kinds of law on the earth, as I've said. One is called civil law, which is the law of the land, and one is called maritime admiralty, which is called the law of water. The maritime admiralty is banking law. So consequently, the corporation and government and people who want to control you, they create a second you, and that second you that they control, that they created, is all capital letters. Check it out. Anytime you get a bill, you get a lawsuit, you get a fine, a ticket, somebody sends you a bill from the Department of Water and Power, check it out on your driver's license, on your Social Security card, on your insurance cards. Anything having to do with business, your name will always be in all capital letters, because only all capital letters can be dealt with by banks and government. You need to wake up and find out how this stuff really works. Because once you understand that you don't need to submit yourself as an American to a British commercial venture called courts. You're an American. You don't need to go to court. You only go to court because you agreed to go to court. When they send you a subpoena to court or a summons to court, and they've sent you something, you look at it and say, hey, Jack, that's not me. That's in all capital letters. All capital letters is a corporation.
Those who are charged under these maritime admiralty courts usually don't understand that they are voluntarily being fined and imprisoned. When a judge calls your name and asks if you are that name, those who say yes are verbally agreeing to represent the artificial person that the name represents. In doing so, you are voluntarily waiving your rights under the Constitution. Your absolute rights as natural persons are the right to life, security, and property, and all of these are very important. Remember that you can never be deprived of these simple rights unless you are willingly waiving them. Please note that these steps are simply the beginning. They merely treat the symptoms instead of attacking the root. To understand fully how to protect yourself, you need to understand your origin.
Ley. Un malentendido común entre las personas es que cualquier ley o regulación que nos gobierna hace parte de una sola categoría, la ley. Pero hay muchas otras formas legales que son acatadas por las personas sin darse cuenta que simplemente no son aplicables para muchos de ellos. Otro malentendido es que la Constitución de una nación nos da nuestros derechos. La Constitución no hace más que manifestar una lista de los derechos que ya tenemos. Nacemos con derechos inalienables por el solo hecho de existir como humanos. Nadie nos los da y nadie nos los puede quitar. Lo que puede hacer cada persona es escoger si los va a ejercer o no. La ley o derecho marítimo es lo que se conoce también como el derecho del mar. Esta ley marítima es reemplazada por la ley civil y solo es aplicable para quienes aceptan someterse a ella. La ley marítima es una ley privada internacional que gobierna las relaciones entre las entidades privadas que operan navíos en los océanos. Observemos cómo y por qué una forma de ley que fue creada para gobernar corporaciones, negocios y navíos navíos ha sido impuesta para gobernar seres humanos naturales. Todo esto se ha logrado a través de la manipulación mágica del lenguaje. Una simple distorsión del lenguaje es suficiente para convencer a todas las personas que esta ley alternativa marítima es aplicable para ellos sobre la ley civil. Una creencia predominante en la cultura moderna es que las licencias, los permisos, los registros y otros documentos se necesitan para operar cualquier vehículo de motor, para usar los caminos públicos, construir estructuras y fundar establecimientos, para hacer parte de la empresa libre, entre otras cosas. Tristemente, estas creencias se basan en muy poca o ninguna investigación y son falsas. Esta estructura de creencias es perpetuada por la ley marítima. Esta ley fue originalmente creada para controlar navíos que atracaban en el extranjero en busca de recursos y productos para importar y exportar. Esta ley está adaptada para los asuntos financieros y mercantiles, no civiles. Cuando un producto sale de un barco y es llevado a tierra extranjera, esa nación toma custodia del producto y lo reconoce con un certificado. Ese certificado constata la fecha de nacimiento del producto en custodia por la nación respectiva. ¿Por qué los seres humanos requieren un certificado de nacimiento en primer lugar? El diccionario Barrón de términos bancarios define un certificado como un papel que establece una declaración de propiedad. Vemos que cada persona con un certificado de nacimiento es definida como una propiedad. La gente es usada como valor de intercambio internacional. Todos los certificados de nacimiento y matrimonio son literalmente recibos legales. Solo hace falta ver la similitud entre un recibo de bodega y un certificado de nacimiento. Ambos documentan la fecha de expedición, un número de serie, un número de registro o de recibo, la descripción del producto y una firma autorizada del informante notificando a la institución pertinente. Aun con toda esta información estando disponible, la mayoría de las personas no saben que se han sometido a la ley marítima, y esto es posible gracias a una simple manipulación del lenguaje. Esta ley marítima cambió el sentido de la palabra persona, de un ser natural y viviente a una corporación. Las licencias de conducir, registros de vehículos, formas de seguros, permisos de construcción, permisos de armas, de trabajo, documentos de impuestos, certificados de nacimiento y defunción, multas de tráfico y muchas otras formas de documentación que una vez se creyó que eran absolutamente necesarias, solo son aplicables a las personas, es decir, a las corporaciones. Cuando se firma cualquiera de estos documentos legales, se están cediendo indirectamente los derechos de nacimiento citados en la Constitución y la persona se rebaja al estatus de una corporación que se crea con el mismo nombre que la persona natural. La única manera de diferenciar los dos nombres es notar que el nombre corporativo siempre está en letras mayúsculas. Esto se conoce como capitis diminutio maxima. Se puede verificar que en cualquier licencia de conducción, certificado de nacimiento, tarjeta de seguridad social, tarjeta de seguro y cualquier otra, solo hay letras mayúsculas para representar la corporación que tiene tu nombre, pero que no eres tú. La corporación es conocida como una persona artificial, mientras que tú, el ser humano, eres una persona natural. Este engaño se profundiza más cuando se trata de ir a una corte. Cuando vamos a una corte, se puede ver que hay sillas para los testigos y que éstas están detrás de una cerca o barrera. El defensor tiene que atravesar esta barrera para entrar en la corte, donde el demandante y el juzgado se encuentran sentados. Este acto simboliza el abordaje de un navío. Desde este momento, todo lo que sucede en la corte está bajo la ley marítima. El juez actúa como un capitán o un banquero. Es el responsable del equilibrio entre las dos partes. Por esta razón siempre hay una suma de dinero en cualquier caso de juzgado. El capitán simplemente está negociando con disputas mercantiles. Una vez que el montante es pagado, el caso se cierra. Para juzgar el caso fuera de la ley marítima donde los derechos civiles no son protegidos, se tiene que evitar estar de acuerdo con representar una persona artificial. Esto se logra declarando que usted es una persona natural, que usted no tiene un nombre o apellido porque aquellos implican un título corporativo. En un caso de tribunal, se puede declarar que el tribunal notifique en honor a la ley civil. Todo juez debe juramentarse como juez civil para ejercer como abogado, pero todavía se debe dejar claro al tribunal y al jurado que el juez debe actuar como un juez civil y no como un banquero. Recuerda que eres un ser humano natural de la tierra. No eres gobernado por nada más que tu propia conciencia. Las leyes son creadas dentro y para el control de una sociedad. La sociedad que creó las leyes que son aplicadas se llama la sociedad de la ley. Aún así, la mejor parte de este completo engaño es el hecho de que no somos por naturaleza miembros de la sociedad de la ley. Entonces sus leyes no se aplican a nosotros como personas naturales.
Los jueces, abogados y oficiales legislativos hacen parte de esta sociedad y en su interior han creado su propia lengua que es engañosamente parecida a la natural. Ellos tienen cosas llamadas estatutos y regulaciones que se parecen a las leyes, pero su lenguaje solo es aplicable para quienes están dentro de esa sociedad. Todas las violaciones de tráfico y todas las demás reglas excepto daño a otra persona o propiedad son normas que no son aplicables para la persona natural. Estas leyes solo se aplican a aquellos dentro de la sociedad de la ley.
El juego de la ley es solo una ilusión. Se puede simplemente abrir los ojos y reclamar la libertad con la que se nació, la cual solo tiene los límites que la imaginación imponga. Así se puede asegurar que los derechos naturales estén protegidos. La más importante línea de defensa contra este engaño es el conocimiento de la perversión de la lengua y estar absolutamente consciente de cómo se forman las creencias y conceptos.
En la religión y la política, las creencias de la gente y sus convicciones son en casi todos los casos de segunda mano y son recibidas sin ser criticadas, desde autoridades que tampoco han examinado las cuestiones referenciadas, sino que las han tomado prefabricadas de otros que también las recibieron y cuyas opiniones no valen la pena.
Todas las formas de perversión de la lengua tienen un reflejo en el microcosmos de la psique individual.
Y el problema que veo es que la humanidad de hoy realmente no tiene idea de su verdadera identidad. Tenemos el trabajo de 8 horas, tenemos la casa, los niños, las cuentas, la televisión, las aficiones, las diligencias que hacemos cada día y finalmente comenzamos a creer que eso es todo lo que somos. Pero tú sabes que somos mucho más, que nuestros cargos o trabajos, más allá del estatus de ser una madre o un padre, más allá de ser teísta o ateo, republicano o demócrata, negro o blanco, hombre o mujer, ¿qué o quiénes somos nosotros? ¿Quiénes somos realmente después de todo? No sabemos, porque cada vez que oímos algo que no queremos oír sobre nosotros mismos, lo rechazamos. Lo tratamos de ignorar y lo proyectamos hacia alguien más para juzgarlo. Esto es lo que se llama represión. Y ya hemos visto lo que la represión puede llegar a hacernos en el nivel individual, pero ¿qué hay del nivel colectivo, el de la humanidad? ¿Qué sucede cuando el mundo entero se niega a ver lo que realmente es?
You see, there are two kinds of law. This is a subject I love. I've been talking about this for years. There are two kinds of law on the earth that rule the whole world, but most people don't know that. All over the world, all governments are ruled by what is called civil law. Civil law goes back to a Latin word, civili, which goes back to the word illy. Oh God, I mean, you could go on for hours on this stuff. Civil law, which is called in all countries the law of the land. So you'll say, well, you can't do that because that's against the law of the land. The law of the land is civil law, Roman civil law, the law of the land. But there is a second law which also operates all over the earth identical. It's called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. That is the law of God in the world of business. I don't care if you're in Japan, in Africa, in China, in Istanbul, Turkey. If you have a company, if you have a corporation, if you are doing business where you buy and sell and make money, you are operating on this earth under something called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. Because if all countries worked on a different commercial code, then nobody could do business with anybody. You couldn't trust Japan to pay you. Japan couldn't trust America to pay them for the cars, because everybody has their own laws. Under the Caesars of Rome, they established under Caesar that all nations in the empire that do business, everybody plays on a level field. If you do business in Africa with China, you pay them. And if Africa does business with American companies, you pay them. You pay whatever it is you're doing business. You don't mess around. The most severe law in this world is called UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. It's the Bible of business on the earth. Uniform Commercial Code. Uniform Commercial Code is based directly on Vatican canon law, on the Roman canon law. Consequently, when a ship pulls into port, it pulls in and stops, and it's called in its berth. The ship is now in its berth. Because it is on the law of the high seas, or commercial maritime, UCC commercial law, rules the seas. So when the ship pulls into its berth, the first thing the captain must do is to present a certificate of manifest to the port authorities, which means that the port authorities need to know how much is on this ship that you're bringing into our country and our economy. How many TVs, how many cars, whatever you're bringing, how much are you bringing into our economy. So you have to have a certificate of manifest of what is the value of your ship here. What are you doing? Consequently, when you are born, you come out of your mother's water. Therefore, you must have a birth certificate, a certificate of manifest, because you are a corporation-owned item. You are a human resource. This goes back to the German Nazi concept that every human coming out of their mother's water must be birthed. And therefore you have to have a certificate, a manifest, to see how much this individual is going to make for us in our new world order. I'm telling you that until you understand the laws, the symbols, the emblems, what these words mean, you're never going to suspect how far gone we really are. Did you know, for instance, that your birth certificate is a security on the stock exchange in the New York stock market? Did you know that? Because if you order your birth certificate, get a new one, order your birth certificate, it'll only cost you, sometimes it's free, it'll only cost you a few dollars. Order your birth certificate. On your birth certificate, all birth certificates in this country, on the bottom, it will tell you this is printed on security papers. Do not accept if not on full color security paper. Then on the right-hand corner, you will always have a series of numbers, red numbers, printed on the birth certificate. Those numbers are a security stock exchange number on the World Stock Exchange. You go to any good stock office and ask them, check these numbers in your computer and see how much your stock is worth, the certificate. And they will check it on the New York Stock Exchange and find your birth certificate is a stock on the stock exchange in America. Why? Because you are worth money to the international bank that bought you in 1930. We need to wake up. This is serious stuff.
Ah, the government. It loves you and wants to keep you safe and well. It even wants to make paying taxes, fines, and court costs easier for you. How? Well, you'll need to meet your straw man. He was born the same day you were. He looks like you, has the same name, and lives in your house, but you never knew he existed. You will have even paid his parking tickets or taxes. The worst part? He's been dead from day one. From every birth certificate, a legal personality, or legal fiction, is created with the same name to confuse little old you into thinking it's you. So, there's a human you and a paper you, or as it's commonly known, a straw man. So when it seems like government officials, court clerks, or the police are speaking English, they aren't. They're speaking legalese, designed to make you agree to verbal and written contracts without even knowing about it, all spun from Black's Law Dictionary. For example, when the police say, "Do you understand?" you'll say, "Yes." What they are really saying is, "Do you stand under our authority?" Oops-a-daisy, you just created a verbal contract with them. Oh, you clever government. Did you know that whenever you register something, you are handing over title to the person you register it with? That's right. Whenever you register something with the government, they assume it belongs to them. Registered your car? Super! Now you are the registered keeper of your vehicle, and the government can crush it when you don't pay your, straw man's taxes. Expecting a new bundle of joy? Well then you need to register your little darling with a birth certificate. Then they can start the process all over again and create a new straw man for your little one. Isn't that great? So when Junior grows up, he'll be able to generate revenue just like you have. When you notify on your baby by signing the birth certificate, your child becomes a ward of state, and if the government doesn't like what you're doing, they'll assume it's okay to take the child away, or make new rules for things they don't like. Not enough school? Smacking your child? Shouting too loudly? Then it's off to social services for the little one. When you get a bill, it's sent to you, but belongs to your straw man, not you. That's why bills, fines, and summons start with Mr., Mrs., or Ms. Sometimes you'll see your surname in capitals, just like on a gravestone. That's because your straw man is dead, and just a silly piece of paper, created before you could comprehend or even consent to it. When you go to court, you represent your straw man, so you, the human, take on any costs, fees, taxes, and fines involved for the straw man. The human you doesn't even need to pay them. But you made a contract with the court by appearing on behalf of your legal personality or straw man, just like the government knew you would. Confused? Well, don't worry. The government doesn't want you to know anyway. If you knew, you'd stop paying things like council tax and parking tickets. Because when you go to court, you are representing your straw man. You are you, alive and made of flesh and blood. Your straw man, or legal personality, is a piece of paper created from your birth certificate. And you think it's you. What a silly Billy.
This is a certified true copy of my live statement of birth. You can get this by applying for it at the Registrar General. They'll give it to you. And it's very interesting because this is where it all began. This is the foundation document. All identification is generated from this document. And so if the foundation document is no good, anything that's made from it is no good. That means driver's licenses, health cards, everything. Now what they did here, this is exactly what he meant when he said, soon every American will be required to register their biological property. Now your parents didn't realize what they were doing when they filled this out, and these didn't exist before 1933. Birth records were recorded in scripture, and these only came into being in 1933 when they hatched this plan. They created a corporate fiction with a name just like yours. In doing this, they registered and monetized the spirit and soul of a living being. This denotes ownership. And when your parents were tricked into filling this out, they allowed your spirit and your soul to be monetized. Now, this is my birth certificate. This is actually a share. See this red number? This A, I'm born in Canada, this is a Class A share. Now, this is called a CUSIP number. And all securities require a CUSIP number. And that's what this is. And you are held as collateral to secure the debt which our government owes to international bankers. So you and me and all these people here are actually collateral. And we don't even own our lives. We are chattel. And we believe we're free. I made an application to the Registrar General and I got my original social insurance application. Now before they sent it to me, they put a little piece of paper over this before they photocopied it. Because my friend has his and they didn't block this out, and when you hold it up, you see Bank of Canada. It is said that the best slaves are the ones who don't know that they're enslaved. And we all have invisible chains on us and we don't know it.
To whom does your life belong? Who owns you? Most people instinctively answer, I own myself. But most people don't actually believe that. What does it mean to own something? It means that you and you alone have the right to decide what is done with that thing. What is yours you can use, you can trade, you can give away, you can destroy. So what does it mean to say you own yourself? It means that you and you alone have the right to decide what is done with your body and your mind, with your time and your energy. If someone else had the right to decide what is done with your body and your mind, your time and your energy, then he would be your owner and you would be his slave. So, are you anyone's slave? Do you pay taxes? Do you feel obligated to obey whatever the politicians decide to call law? Do you imagine that someone else has the right to control you, to rule you? Do you vote? In every political election, you are asked to decide who you want owning you, but owning yourself is never one of the options offered. The only choice you are given is the choice of which politicians will coerce and control you by way of so-called regulation and legislation, and confiscate what you produce by way of taxation. Whoever wins, you will be extorted and dominated. When you vote, whether you win or not, you are accepting that someone else has the right to rule you. You are conceding the state's authority over you. You are agreeing that you are going to be someone's slave, with the only question being which political master will own you. If you believe that you have an obligation to pay taxes, if you concede that it is up to someone else to decide how much of your earnings they will let you keep, then you are their slave. If you own yourself, you don't need the permission of anyone, any individual, any group, any collective, any country, any legislature, to run your own life, make your own choices, and keep the fruits of your own labor. As long as the politicians see you voting, petitioning, protesting, and campaigning, begging for tax cuts, whining for different legislation, as long as they see you timidly obeying whatever commands they issue, while begging them to change their so-called laws, then they know that they own you in mind and body. Writing or calling your congressman merely tells him that you still think he's important, that you still view him and his fellow parasites as authority, and that you still think it's his choice whether to let you be free or not. As long as you play their games and legitimize their system, obeying their so-called laws and paying their so-called taxes, acting as if they are your rightful lords and masters, the tyrants know they have nothing to fear. The slave master doesn't mind his slaves pitifully begging for mercy, as long as they keep obeying and keep producing wealth for the master to steal. Those in power aren't worried about elections or petitions. What they do fear is that one day their victims will realize the truth, will stop believing in the divine right of politicians, will stop calling liars and crooks lawmakers, will stop calling the tyrants, mercenaries, law enforcers, will stop believing that anyone has the right to rule them, will stop imagining authority where there is none, will realize that they own themselves, and will stop bowing to the parasitical, anti-human beast called government. If you own your time and effort, and the fruits of your labor, then stop asking nicely to be allowed to keep it. If you own yourself, then stop asking nicely for legislative permission to run your own life. If you actually believe in unalienable rights, in individual liberty, in freedom, then stop asking nicely for the sociopathic parasites to let you be free. For humanity to be free, people need to stop thinking, talking, and acting like slaves. Stop bowing to megalomaniacs. Stop paying tribute to sociopaths. Stop obeying political parasites. If you truly understand that you own yourself, then start acting like it.